the student debt fight in front of the Supreme Court, I mean, who knows how much water that holds, their assessment of the Biden administration's arguments in front of the Supreme Court, just given how extreme and far right the Supreme Court is, and how little power the more liberal members of the court have. However, it seems as if the Biden administration's case is really strong. They chose to forgive student debt under the 2003 HEROES Act authority. Seems like there's very few holes that you can poke in their reasoning. We would have preferred here, and I would have preferred at least, that the Biden administration used the Department of Education's statutory authority to do that. But Biden didn't want to, because that would open the door for well, why don't we just cancel all of it if the DOE has that ability? It's kind of the same reasoning that you saw during the COVID COBRA. Right, the COBRA extension under COVID. There was the possibility for Congress to temporarily expand Medicare for everybody to have health care if they were really worried about people losing healthcare in the middle of a pandemic. And for their stated reasons, which they're always concerned about cost, COBRA was immensely more costly and bureaucratic and Byzantine, and it really didn't work as well, or it still, prevented a lot of people from losing their health insurance. But the more straightforward option of expanding Medicare was not really under consideration by Pelosi and the Democrats in the House, because they were worried that if you expand Medicare in a crisis, people are going to begin to realize that they could just have this all the time. We could have a universal health care system. So that's really the similar reasoning that the Biden administration used in the HEROES Act, as opposed to the Department of Education and their authority. However, the reason that they used is still quite bulletproof. Especially because these are the kinds of arguments that are being leveled against student debt cancellation. They make no sense. And Larry Kudlow exemplifies that more than anybody.
The cost estimates are $400-500 billion, all the way up to $1 trillion. So why shouldn't that money? Why don't the kids pay what they owe for a change? It's only about 25% of the whole population, and put the money into the border. Put the money into the border, which is desperately needed, as you say, to stop fentanyl, to restore law and order, to stop the cartels. I mean, why not do that? That's a matter of the power of the purse.
Well, look, I think at the end of the day, they need to repay the notes, because the notes need to be repaid. When you
there's absolutely no overlapping what Larry Kudlow is advocating for. This is essentially by the Biden administration deciding we're going to just throw away these IOUs for $10,000 for borrowers making less than $125,000, $20,000 for borrowers who took out Pell Grants. This is just essentially them saying, well, we don't need this money. It is completely separate from Congress's power of the purse that Kudlow is referencing there. And the emphasis on kids. These aren't kids. I looked this up right before we went on air. Those aged between 50 and 61 have the highest average of student debt in their age bracket than any other group. The average is $45,000 compared to the overall average in the country. It's around 37. So the fact that the idea that these are just, hippie kids smoking pot, I know that plays with the Fox News audience, but it just does not match the reality of what student debt means in this country. And when he goes, it's just 25% of people that hold it. I mean, that's a pretty big figure. 1 in 5 is the number I know, that 1 in 5 Americans in debt, unable to participate in the economy in the way that Kudlow and his ilk supposedly want them to, buying homes, being job creators. This all precludes them from doing that. And yet, what's more valuable to people like Kudlow is the disciplinary element of student debt, which is that those 43 million people who hold federal student loan debt, they are much more likely to go into industries that they're going to make them a lot more money. And they'll have less power in their workplace because they need their job to pay back student debt. They're not going to go into, say, social work sometimes or
Nestle slavery defense.
Right. They're going to go to a corporate law firm or work at Goldman Sachs.
We're a moronic society that's been funneling people towards dumb shit like how we can sell the most advertisements or package the financial instruments in a way that detonates the economy in a way that we, survive it with our profits intact. The idea that we trust people's education to people who want to get a cut out of, borrowing money to that is just, satanic. Like, debt forgiveness is actually biblical. We should be, the reason we're down on like nurses and teachers and stuff like that, we have is because it's actually hard for people to finance their way into learning those skills, and it's so short-sighted, and it's it is about control, but it's also making us a really shabby culture.
The knock-on effects of what you describe is like, who's going to be a doctor in this country? Who's going to be a lawyer in this country? A lot of times it's going to be people that already were really wealthy and don't have to pay off that kind of debt or grew up with money.
Or who's going to be in the media.
Right. Or
if politics.
Right. So it becomes that kind of class of person. And if we're all about everybody has a chance in America, and it's a myth, but one that these kinds of people like to hold up about
everybody
America's
has a chance
greatness
that can be capitalized by a capitalist.
Yes. And so there really is, they're struggling to come up with an argument for this. And they pretend to, like, the student debt that was being taken on by people who are now in their 50s and 60s is proportionate to that as the cost of going to college has risen exponentially, that young people face. It's just not the same. And I'm hopeful, at least based on some of the reporting out of the Supreme Court, more hopeful than I was before the argument started, that SCOTUS will not overturn Biden's clear legal authority to do this.
Yeah, we should just read into the record the quote that we always do from Roger Freeman, a key educational advisor to Nixon. This is from The Intercept, John Schwartz, I believe. Then working for re-election of California Governor Ronald Reagan, spelled out quite precisely what the conservative counterattack was aimed at preventing. Quote, "We are in danger of producing an educated proletariat that's dynamite." That's against the California public higher education system. "We have to be selective on who we allow to go through higher education. If not, we will have a large number of highly trained and unemployed people."
With more power.
Well, and they'd be questioning like, is education really going to lead all of us to better prosperity and wages, or is it going to lead to select few and smaller amount?
When they say unemployed, that's code for someone in the labor market having choices.